Deimos, level 5 upgrade. So it's been a while since I've worked on this RC, but there's a couple of things I need to take care of. So we got some adapters, which I'll tell you about a little bit more later on, and of course the battery expansion kit that Traxxas makes. Kind of need this because the battery I want to use for this RC doesn't even fit in it right now, so this is definitely a necessity. So let's go ahead and get it installed. So the first thing I need to go ahead and do is undo the 4 screws that hold in the plate for the ESC. So I went ahead and I popped off the SCT sidewinder so I can go ahead and get the ESC plate out. Since this wasn't really made for the Traxxas and there's no screw holes, I just used double-sided tape. So it's time to go ahead and open this up and get what we need so we can go ahead and get this installed. So let's get the annoying part done with first. As you can see, they include 4 long screws and 4 of these spacers. Let me show you how this is installed. So what I gotta do is I gotta put these cylinders in between the ESC plate and the chassis, and then once they're all lined up, I have to go ahead and just put the screw through the top. That sounds simple, but it is a pain to get these all lined up on the pegs because, well, nothing's really holding them in place. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that all off camera. With that installed, I went ahead and put some new double-sided tape, and instead of putting it sideways, I'm gonna go ahead and put it in right on the center. That way I can have access to the screws in the future. Now I need to go ahead and take off the battery post. Once I get the old one off, I'm just gonna go ahead and use the extended one and then reinstall it. Now I just gotta do that for both sides. Now with that taken care of, I can go ahead and install this giant 5000 milliamp 3S LiPo in there without having any issues. Now, I'm not done. There's a few other things I want to take care of. First of all, this antenna tube, black, let's get rid of that and replace it with the red one. And I went ahead and added a little antenna tube top. There, that looks better. Now time for the biggest issue I have. You can see that there's no plug to, plug in a battery, because how this was set up, I had an old TRX plug kind of jerry-rigged on here. It didn't hold very long. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is install a new male connector. So now that I'm in the garage, which has got plenty of ventilation, I can go ahead and do some soldering. So first of all, I need to go ahead and strip the tips of these wires. Now, for the plugs themselves, you can see that there is a bottom that has no markings and a top that does have markings. On the top, you'll see that there is a line right there. What I need to do is get a file and scratch this up to that line. And then I'm gonna go ahead and cover that up with some solder. Now the solder there is just gonna make things a lot easier when I attach the wire. And remember, don't cross that line. If you cross that line with the solder, then this is not gonna be able to plug into the piece. And now I need to go ahead and cover these with solder. Now that these are covered with solder, what I'm gonna go ahead and do is put some shrink tubing over it. Then I just gotta line everything up properly and then attach the plug connectors. Once that's taken care of, I'm just gonna go ahead and slide up the shrink tube and bring it right up to the tip and then shrink it, with a lighter. And then I just, gotta line things up and then push everything into place. And yeah, this takes a little bit of strength to get these in here. All right, with the plug taken care of, I'm gonna go ahead and move on to, the wire that goes for the switch. I took the switch off, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put some shrink tube on there. I'm gonna put these 2 wires head to head, solder them together, and then cover it with shrink tubing. And there you go. I went ahead and soldered it in a loop. That way, if I ever want to add a switch in the future, I can just go ahead and cut this part off and then reattach some new wires, and bam, I can have a switch. But for now, this will do. So now it's time to go ahead and test everything out. So we're gonna turn on the remote. Then, because I went ahead and soldered the switch for the power to automatically be on, as soon as I plug in a battery, it should work. Beautiful. All right, does it turn? Looks good. And finally, I get to test out this battery with this setup. All right. And with that taken care of, I can finally get this RC up and running again, now that I can actually hook up a battery. So that means I can go ahead and start doing some speed runs. And like always, I have to give a huge shout out to everyone who's helped me on Patreon. Because of you guys, this was made possible. And that was a level 5 upgrade for Deimos.